Oh, that was quick. Hello, everyone. I think YouTube has just booted me in a bit faster than I expected. Yes, we're up and live. Do let me know, please, if you can see me and if you can hear me okay. And welcome to another fabulous Fox and Friday live oil painting session. Today we have a very, very intensely coloured poppy to paint. My wife Michelle brought these back from the garden centre just recently so she could plant some to go in her vegetable beds. Companion growing, I believe you call it. So I stole one because they're so beautiful. But the thing is, what makes them beautiful can also make them pretty hard to paint, because very high chroma oranges like this. Thank you, everybody. Very high chroma oranges. By chroma, I mean the intensity of the color. So if you haven't come across the term chroma before, I know most of you have, but just in case anyone's watching who hasn't, very low chroma is very close to gray. Very high chroma is basically this. Very intense color. It's not quite the same thing as saturation, but almost the same. Colors like that can be tricky to get the chroma high enough. So you need to be very careful with your mixes. So the color that I would recommend you use, the tube paint I would recommend you use if you're going for oranges, red oranges, this high chroma, is permanent orange. So I use Michael Harding permanent orange. Where is it? I'm just going to tell you what the pigment is. So this is an organic, it's a single pigment paint. Like most of the paints you want single pigment paints, not mixes, right? And it's PO73 and it's a pyrrole organic synthetic pigment. Very, very high chroma, which you'll see when we get to it. So let's switch over to the easel. And I can also show you, I'll just show you the palette quickly as well before we go any further, just so I can show you quickly what I've got here. Both these whites are lead white. Then we've got cad yellow, because, you know, some parts I'm going to want to push a little bit more yellow. We've got permanent orange. I did mean to put transparent red oxide out as well, but I've forgotten it. So we'll see how we go. Green gold. Transparent red oxide. So transparent red oxide transparent red oxide is basically like permanent orange but low value. Very high chroma. Mix those two together and that's going to be really good for the shadow colors. If I need to send it a little bit more red than that in the shadows, I need the color that I've forgotten to put out. Quinacridone rose. The queen of reds. I didn't even leave a space for it on my palette, look. The thing is, though, about all of these pigments together, they're all organics, so very, very high chroma, but they're also all slightly transparent. And today, I'm going to be starting off this painting. So that would be like a good shadow color. That would be a good light color. I'm going to be starting off this painting with a wipeout. So I'm going to paint all of the background in, and then I'm going to wipe out the area for the flower, which means I need to wipe out basically as much of the paint as I possibly can. So this is an Ampersand Gessobord panel, 10x8, but I've also primed it. If this is one of those, here's one I prepared earlier moments. I've primed it with lead white. Michael Harding Foundation White. I think it's lead with a little bit of titanium. Takes about 2 weeks to dry. I put it on with a curved bladed knife, so there's some texture in it as well. How are we doing, everybody? How is everybody today? I hope you're all well. We are having amazingly summery weather over here. Kate says, Paul, what on earth do you plan to do with that enormous tube of permanent orange? I know, it's ridiculously big, right? I got it years ago. Not realize, I don't even know why I got such a big tube. literally, I've had this over 10 years. You know, you can see how beat up the tube is, and I only ever use a little bit at a time. I bought it when I didn't realise that basically the high chroma paints you very rarely need. You know, raw umber, get that in a big tube, because you paint loads with that. Hello Sandra, good to see you. BJ says, can I ask what you use to paint the back of your glass palette? It's actually not paint, it's just a sheet of paper. That happens to be about a value 5, a middle value. There's a value 5, and fairly close to neutral. Jan's been to the Emporium. Oh, that's a rabbit hole once you start going down there, looking for more and more beautiful objects to paint. I'm going to be due another visit to the local antiques emporium soon. The one I go to, if anybody's interested, I know at least 2 of you are local to me. I go to the Malthouse Antiques Collective in Stroud. Okay, look. Linseed oil. And where's my... Oh, here we go. Now this, what I've got in here, is terps. Any solvent will do, Gamsol will do. Just a dribble. So this is like mostly oil. Makeup sponge. Dab it in there, and then we're going to begin by wiping, or at least I'm going to begin anyway, by wiping over the surface. Now this panel actually I prepared quite a long time ago. It's well cured and the oil is beading slightly on the surface. It's kind of sitting a little bit on the surface. Doesn't matter too much though, because what I'm going to do now is with a bit of kitchen roll, I'm going to wipe all of that back so that I end up with a very, very thin layer. Now, the good thing for me about using an oil-primed panel today is that it means it's going to be easier for me to wipe back the paint. When I come to wipe back the paint, because I'm going to cover all of this with the background colours now. I'm going to paint the background and I'm going to paint the poppy into it. But if I, especially because I'm working like in one session, all wet paint, alla prima, if I try to paint a high chroma orange over what is basically a dark brown here, the orange is going to mix with the brown, so I've got to wipe out the area where I'm going to put the orange down. Okay. And Breslin, first time on a live. Excellent. Good to see you here. Oh, Jan, you've been there. You know what it's like. The Antiques Emporium in Stroud, the Malthouse Antiques Collective. Yeah, what an amazing place. Basically, you know my secret now, Jan. That's where I get everything that we paint on my workshops. Copper kettles, all of those beautiful bowls. Let's get some colours mixed. So I know down here, oh, you know what I should do before we do anything else? I should show you some things about the, we'll have a look at in Chroma Magic, right? Not that screen, that's me monitoring the stream and the comments. Let's get the right one up. Technology, getting in the way again, but also making incredible things possible, like what we're doing today. So here we go. This is Chroma Magic, a bit more info in the description, video description if you've never seen this before. So, basically we've got background, we're like close to grey, about a value 6 over here. I just want general colours, so if I make the sample size really big, I get a general kind of idea. As we go back, you watch the values drop, you'll see the values start to drop down here. Until we get back here, we're like at value 4, value 3. Until we get back to the background, we're almost as dark as paint can get. That's the colour back there, right? The poppy, though, Now I'm going to try and simplify this. You look at this and it's incredibly complicated, and the color is incredibly intense. So what we have to do is we have to simplify. I'm going to try and simplify this into the fewest possible colors, certainly no more than 3, and try and get it down to only 2 colors if I can. The light and the shadow. So a couple of things I want you to notice about this. All of these little paint swatches, these little color swatches down here, basically show me pretty much the range of paint, give or take a little, the range of colors that's available in oil paint. So look at that. This is, when I talk about chroma, this is chroma from very low chroma on the left to very high chroma. That's about as high as you can get, and it's about a value 6, and that's the light part, right? Let's try a shadow part. It's only a little bit more, about a value step lower. Look how intense that is. Still really intense, and it's still the highest chroma we can get. So let's start off, when we get onto the actual poppy itself, we'll start off just with 2 colors, one for light and one for shadow. We'll lay those in, and as soon as we've got the form, then we can start thinking about the details, but not until we start seeing light and shadow. The bottle, we generally have like what you'd expect, a bunch of low value, fairly low chroma greens. Not too bothered about that. I'm not really that bothered if it really looks like there's a bottle there at all. I don't really mind. I will suggest it. But the main event here is the poppy, isn't it, really? That's the bit we're interested in. The sandals from Stockholm, the sandal family. I wonder if you're all watching at once. I know I'm kidding. I know it's not all of you, really. It's just your YouTube handle. Jason says, is the table background all one piece? Yes, it is, because I took this photo, as you can probably tell, looking down very steeply on the subject, on the flower. So it's a top-down viewpoint, and deliberately done. And then I put a board over one side to cast that shadow behind the flower, to cut the light out in the background behind the flower so that it stands out more. So let's mix a color that's going to be something like right for the bottom at the front, like around here. I know I want fairly low chroma. I want about a value 6. I've got white and raw umber. Going to need probably plenty of this. So I'm not going to mix it together too well. I'm just checking the value on my value scale. And I'm going to mix some odd other little bits of color in there as well, like a little bit of green gold, a little bit of transparent red oxide. I'll put a little bit of black in there just to kind of squidge it around, And then I want a color that's like somewhere in between the deep shadow and this color. So as we're moving back, I want probably like, if that's a 6 and I'm going down to a 1 in the shadow, like about halfway between, that would be like a 3 or a 4, say. Is that about a value 3? Yeah, it's about a 3, value 3, 3.5. I'm going to put a little bit more transparent red oxide in that, a little bit of green gold, give it a little bit of chroma because we're heading to the shadow. And then when we get to the shadow, these are actually upside down. So let's lay them out in the palette as we're going to be painting them, right? Value 6 for the front, moving back towards the background, and then by the time we get to the back, pretty much all raw umber. I'm going to put some more raw umber out. Ref earlier comment about wanting a large tube when it comes to the raw umber. I'll probably use more raw umber than any other tube paint, with a possible exception of white. Put a little bit of black in there. So this is my background colours, already mixed. I'm going to paint them with this. This is a Princeton Catalyst 01 silicon spatula. So at the front, it's like all the value 6, right? Lighter over on the right hand side, probably a little bit. See, the nice thing about literally, this is, you know, I'm just clagging this on. I want randomness. I want slightly unmixed paint. I want texture. I don't want it to be perfect. The nice thing about an oil primed panel is just the paint goes on so smoothly, so nicely. We're getting back to the shadow here. It's starting to get a little bit darker. You know, you don't have to worry about painting this all perfectly and copying every mark. You know, you generally need it to have texture and life and be about the right value. The time we get to the back, we're in shadow. Look at that beautiful texture and all of that interest. You know, I want all of that. I want all of that visual interest in life. Just making sure we nail the values and the colours are about right. A bit more dark up here. That's why I like doing it with this spatula thing. For two reasons. One, it covers really quickly. Doesn't it really? You know, that didn't take very long. And also, you know, you can't get too precious about it when you're painting with a cooking implement. Basically, what is a cooking implement? But have I got the shadows in about the right place? I want this darker here. Make sure we're, you know, I'm not being completely random about this. I need to make sure that I'm getting the right values in the right place. A little bit darker here. I want my mid, bit of my mid value here, I think. Wild, huh? But look at all that texture that's in the reference photo, you know. It doesn't have to be the same texture, but I want texture in there. And trying to create a texture like that is, well, that way lies madness. But this is great because now I've got, you know, I'm straight into the painting. I've got the panel covered. I've got life in here already. I've got visual interest, you know. This is like that, the abstract side of painting, if you like. Putting a little bit more transparent red oxide in the shadow, so I've got a little bit more chroma in there. Let's have a bit of green gold in there too. You know, you can play here. The next bit is tough. This bit you can play here. And if I want to soften this transition going into the background, wipe this off and then, because we want like an impression of a soft edge going back there. Probably a little bit too dark too soon here. I think that'll work. What do you think? I think that'll work. Let's not mess about, you know. Let's get some stuff on there. Actually, Sarah, I don't know if you're here, but I've got some of those Q-tips that you sent me. Never having used these before. Maybe I'll try them today for the wiping out part. So Q-tips you can use. I've also got a paint shaper here. Little silicone bladed tool, which is really good for removing paint. But I'm going to start as I usually do with a piece of kitchen roll, which I usually fold around like this and make a kind of a tool out for wiping out of this. Yeah, so on Chroma Magic, as Michelle says, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, I need more chroma here. Michelle we are very lucky to have Michelle here because she is the developer who created, the developer and the creative genius behind the Chroma Magic app. So she can definitely answer any questions you might have about how it works because she made it. This astonishingly useful tool. A little bit more chroma. So I'm just I'm just trying to decide where I might want a little bit more chroma there. If I want to get some texture in there, a bit more texture, pan scrubs are great for that. I can also kind of draw with it. I can remove some of the paint and make some texture. Make it lighter there, take it out again, just making some visual interest. Creating an impression. It doesn't have to be perfectly the same as what's there in the reference photo, but it helps if the values are good. I just got my white really, really dirty. So I'm squinting down and I'm looking at my values and I'm checking them and deciding, like, I think the lighter value maybe needs to go a little bit further up. What I'm probably doing more than anything else is avoiding starting to wipe out where the flower's going to go, because that's the pressure. That's the pressurized part of the painting, right? Cohen says, I find the glass bottle is too blue for the green gold. Oh, it totally is, actually. I did forget. Yeah, when I put the materials list out, I forgot a colour. Sorry about that. You're going to need some phthalo green as well. My bad. You will also want some phthalo green or something else to push that colour more blue, so ultramarine would probably do it. Ultramarine would work. Can someone recommend me Dirty Colour Art? What an amazing handle. Can someone recommend me a brand that has more opaque pyrrole red? Pyrrole red they are transparent. It's the pigment. So it isn't opaque. I don't think you could get an opaque one unless it was mixed with something else, in which case you can mix it yourself, Joan says, I have that orange in acrylics, but not in oils. Can I use it? I certainly wouldn't use them. We use it with oils unless you're painting just in acrylics. Colette says, the board, what size is it and did you paint it? The board it's sitting on, if you mean in the reference photo, it's actually a prayer stool, an Indian prayer stool. I didn't paint it. That's years of patina of, I think, people's knees whilst they were praying to Krishna or something. Laura says, where to get Michael Harding Foundation White Primer? I'm not sure he sells it anymore. He must still do an oil primer, but it probably hasn't got lead white in it, so that's going to be a tough one, I'm afraid. I'm not sure. Let's start figuring out where this flower is going to go. Another nice thing, by the way, about Chroma Magic is you can automatically put a grid of however many divisions you want on your reference photo. So if I'm roughly thinking about, like, that's about halfway up, that's about a quarter, that's about vertically, that's about halfway, and that's about a quarter, something like that. It comes out to about here, the furthest right part of the flower. I'm not too bothered about it being exactly right. What I'm mostly after is getting a feeling of the there-ness of the flower, that it's there, that you feel like the flower is living, in the painting. It's going to come down to little below halfway between those, about here probably. That's about the lowest point. So I'm looking for the furthest right, furthest left. Left, I think, is about there. And there's a higher petal coming around here, the highest point. About here probably. So can you see I'm marking out the space in which the flower is going to live, and then I'm going to try and wipe out shapes of the petal. So this is what I was talking about earlier on. If you're using like just a straight ampersand panel, or even horror of horrors oil painting paper, you know, that's going to be more absorbent. Oil painting paper in particularly is extremely absorbent and horrible. You can't wipe out on it. You can't do it. You can't remove the paint. On an ampersand panel, you can remove the paint, but you might find you need a little help from some solvent. So now I'm roughing out the drawing of where I think it wants to go. This is just like doing a straight line blocking. I'm just kind of, wow, this paint is thick on there. I'm just kind of figuring out the shape now. I've worked out its extremities, and now I'm figuring out the bounds of the shape. But I'm looking at the outside edge of the marks that I'm making. That's roughly where I want it to be. And the reason I'm wiping it out, as I said before, if I mixed up a nice high chroma orange and painted it into this, it would just disappear. You can't lay wet paint of a lighter value and a higher chroma on wet paint, you know. I think this might have gone a bit too far to the right. Just looking at that, I think it's possibly a little bit too far over. We got petal comes down here, something like around there. A little bit further over, I think, probably. I say it's like with a flower, like absolute perfection of the drawing to me doesn't matter so much. Obviously, if it's somebody's head, then it's really important if you want it to look like them. But you know, I'm mostly after the feeling of the flower, but I want it to be in about the right place. Oh, you can get it from. Thanks, Kathy. You can get foundation white from Dick Blick or Jerry's, apparently. Oh, the dog's getting very excited. We've got friends coming over for dinner today, and I think that's probably them arriving. So then I'm just going to take all of this out, because all of this needs to be higher chroma. So my job now that I've got the rough shape of the flower is just to remove all of this paint. I'll never get all of it off, and I'm not going to, you know, I'm not too bothered about perfection of the shape. I want it to be reasonably close. The other nice thing about having a dark background is that I can kind of work back into the shape to cut into it if I get any of the drawing really out, you know. So what I want is like a really simple version of this, just to be working, to be reasonably convincing as soon as possible. At this point, I can't really do much around here, you know, without really changing the painting. Also, the paint is pretty thick there, you know, so I want to leave that alone if I possibly can. The shape, we're looking for the shape a little bit higher on the right. What do you think, everybody? How close is the shape? What do you think? You tell me what you think. Such a bad idea asking for feedback on how accurate the shape is. I'll spend the rest of the session like worrying when people said, oh no, that bit's a bit too high, it doesn't come out enough on the left, you've got to... That was such an unwise thing to ask. But now go on, tell me in the comments. Tell me what you think. You eyeball the shape. The other nice thing about wipeouts is that it's easier to see shape. You're dealing with mass straight away from the beginning, you know. So can you see, like, I'm just removing as much paint as I possibly can. So I'm going back to the panel, basically. And it's also removing the oil layer as well. So I had this lovely oil layer, so all this paint could just kind of slide across the surface. Now that I'm removing the paint for the flower itself, I'm also removing the oil layer. So hopefully, you know, when I put this high chroma color down, it's going to stick. Let's get my background colors out of the way. I'm going to keep them on the palette. So that was about a value 6. Then we were down to about a 3. So I like to lay my palette out in value terms. It just helps me keep control of things. Very dark and then light at the top. I've unfortunately got my white contaminated with a lot of paint there, so that's pretty much useless now. Unless I find a use for that colour at some point. Let's clean the palette up. A bit of solvent. A well-organised palette, I feel. Mine do run away from me, I should say, but a well-organised palette, at least at the beginning of a painting, really helps you organise your thoughts, organise the value. I think of it as a value map of the painting. The colour map, if you like. So I always lay mine out like this. Different strips for different colour areas, like I've got one for the background here. This is pretty simple, you know, then I'll have one for the flower, and I'll probably end up with one for the bottle too. Depending on how much I paint the bottle, or even if I do at all. So let's have a look now. Actually, this has got a little bit of solvent on it. This rag here, like maybe I can wipe off a little more paint. Probably don't need to get too obsessed about it, but I don't want the edges to mix with the background too much. That's probably all right. Sandra says, I would cut in just a bit more at the top to give it more drama. Ooh. Kate says, do you have a grid on your ref photo? Are you eyeballing it? Yeah, I've got a 4x4 grid on, so I'm working off Chroma Magic directly as on my screen, you know, so I'm using that, a combination of that on my as my reference, and I've got the reference photo, like I'm monitoring the stream on the screen across the room from me. It's about probably 20 feet away, 15, 20 feet away from me, which means that I can see the reference photo about 2 centimeters tall, about 1 inch tall, which is really good for eyeballing the values. So I can squint down, you know, and see if I'm getting the values and the shape about right. Joan says it's perfect. Thanks, Joan. You can come again. How are you cleaning the paint off? It's just kitchen roll, nothing else. The key is the surface. You know, it's oil primed, quite smooth oil primed panel. Francis says there's more of a curve on the upper petal on the right and more of an angle on the upper left, or I'm confusing left, right. No, I think you're probably right. More of a curve here, right? Difficult for me to change that now. I suppose I can still do it now, like, because I haven't put any paint on yet. I've got a bit of a straight line here, haven't I, coming down where that wants to be a bit more curved. And I've just kind of, I've fudged this bit over here. I haven't really done a really great job of that. Because there's so much complexity here, I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered with that. Just get it something like, right? We'll sort it out as we go. So if I mix up some color now, I want, a value 6 for my light, and a little bit below a value 5 for my shadow. So this is really hard to tell. Have I got my phone handy with me? Let me have a quick look, because I want to show you something, but I don't think I've got my phone handy. Is it here? It isn't. I can't find it. That's frustrating, so I'll just have to tell you. You'll just have to kind of imagine. So this is a really high chroma color, so it's really hard to tell what value it is. Now, actually, I know that it's about a value 6, maybe just a little bit below that. But if I put it on my value scale, I'll show you this, like, make the palette bigger so you can see. If I put it on my value scale, you know, that is so hard to judge whether that value is a 6 or not, or, you know, what is it? Is it a 5? And why is it so hard to judge? It's really hard to judge because the chroma is so high. In fact, it's almost impossible with something this high chroma. So what can you do? If you get your phone, which unfortunately I don't have mine handy, I'd show you, you can put it onto photo, and then you can, if you go into advanced settings, there's usually a grayscale option, and then you can hold it over the value scale, and it will show you the actual values that you've got mixed there. I mean, this is not mixed at all. So knowing what value the paint is out of the tube is really, really handy. So I know, because I've painted with this quite a lot, that the value of this color is about a 5. Between a 5 and a 6, probably a little bit closer to a 5. Also, if you use that phone hack thing, it gives you a bit of instant feedback about what your values actually are. And after a while, you develop an eye for it. There isn't any other way to say it, really. So I want this to go a little bit lighter. I think at the moment it could probably go a little bit more yellow too. So my only choice really, if I want to bring this up in value, is to bring in some cad yellow. That's also going to make it slightly more opaque, which is probably a pretty good thing at this point. Because, you know, if I just painted with this pyrrole orange by itself, it's an organic transparent pigment. So that's probably about a value 6. As I say, really hard to judge, but we're getting there. So what about if I get a brush, let's say a soft synthetic. So this is Rosemary's brush, Angled Eclipse. First heard about these brushes, I think, from Kathleen Speranza, amazing flower painter. Is it going to take? Where's there a light part? This shape is totally out here. Spatula probably not the best tool to draw with. I'm just going to put some on, and I'm going to see if it's going to take on the surface. So this is a light area. Oh, that takes fine. Whoa, look at that. Fireworks. Looks good to me. So all of this area is a light area, right? This is all light until we come down to about this area. So let's see if I can get it up to the edge without contaminating the brush too much. I'm going to really load the brush now. So I want a hard edge. Will it go? Started to mix a little bit. Can you see that? I've got a little bit of the mix on there on my brush. It's mixed with the background, so I've got to wipe that off. Do the rest. Yeah, that's all right. I can live with that. Maybe a little bit dark still. So I can work in a little bit more raw cad yellow, maybe a tiny bit of white, although that does mean I'm losing chroma. There's just an area here I think might be a little bit lighter. This paint is thick. It's a day of painting thickly, because I want this colour to take. But look at that. I mean, that's, you know, looks pretty good. Now the shadow, I'm going to start again with the permanent orange. And I'm going to work in some transparent red oxide. Now this is more tricky because both of these colors are transparent, but I've got to get that. See, that's too dark now. I've got to get that, that high chroma if I can. So what value have I got there? Let's check. This is way too dark. Look, it's like a value 3. It's about value 3, way too dark. I want to be up here, you know. Oh, the photo is obscuring my value scale. I want to be here about a 5 and I'm here 3. So let's get rid of that. Bring a little bit back. Bring some more of the orange in. Not quite a 5, I would say a little bit below a 5. And if it feels like, I think actually that's probably pretty good. If I wanted to add a little bit more chroma, like this transparent red oxide is probably about the right value as it is. So I'll get a little bit more, sorry, not transparent red oxide, quinacridone rose. So I'll get a little bit more chroma out of that. But this is really transparent. I'm going to get a smaller brush. So this is also Rosemary's Eclipse, angled Eclipse. This is a smaller one, the 1/4 inch one. I really do like these brushes for flowers. It's just the shape of them. They're nice and soft. And flats are good for petal shapes anyway. But it's nice having this little pointed edge on them, so you can kind of, if you want to, you can put down like a fairly broad stroke and then end up with a fine line just by kind of, oh, let's go back to the painting. Just by kind of rolling the brush, you know, you can change the width of the line that you get. Jamie says, what do you use for your streaming software? I use OBS. I have 3 cameras which all go into a Blackmagic switch, and I control the switch from my laptop, which is next to my easel when I stream, so I can switch cameras. But that's the Blackmagic switch and the software that comes with it. From the switch, they all go into a deck on my a card on my Blackmagic card on my big PC, streaming PC, on which I run OBS. For the sound, it's going through Adobe Audition, which has a gate and a noise reduction on it. I've got a lavalier mic and I've got a nice expensive AKG mic next to the easel. And then from there, the sound goes into OBS. There you go. More than you ever wanted to know about how I do my streaming. Let's put shadow color in. Is this too dark? I think it might still be a bit too dark. I'm going to bring some of the light color in. You see, there's not much difference between the light and the shadow here, really. You see, I'm down to about a 4. Let's try it. But I need there to be enough difference to be able to see that there's a shadow there still. So this area would be shadow. So a lot of the key to this working is making it really simple. Drastically simplifying the shape, you know. And then there's a light petal comes over that shadow area, so I need that sharp edge over it here. See, I've done that thick paint, so I can get a sharp edge. One brush for the light, one for the shadow. Shadow area. Not too bothered, as I was saying, about perfection of shape, as long as I get it nice and simple. So here we've got a shadow area. I've got to be really careful here because I'm picking up background onto my brushes, background paint, and that's very low chroma and it's going to destroy the chroma, so I've got to be continually wiping my brush. We've got a shadow area coming around here. And that's actually, see, I'm going to roll the brush so I get a thinner line as I go around. That's actually a cast shadow. We've got quite a light part of the flower here. It's a cast shadow, and in a moment, we're painting what's casting that shadow. Shadow area. So I've made the shadow bigger than it needs to be. Hard edge. And there is a light shape which is going more towards yellow actually. Here is this petal coming down and overlaying that. So I'm going to start here, bring it down and overlay it. Nice. And this being a cast shadow, it's going to have a soft edge on the outside. So I want a soft edge here and a hard edge there. Same here, I want a hard edge here where I've got a form over the shadow. And because it's a cast shadow, just like it was a cast shadow being cast by, you know, some object like a jug or something, the outside of the cast shadow is soft and we're starting to build form. As we go around the top here, we're getting a little bit darker. Jiggling the brush around a little bit to try and get this kind of papery feeling of the edge. And then we're lighter here as we come towards the center of the flower. So I'm painting this as simply as I possibly can because, you know, I know if I fuss with these colors and if I diddle around with it, I'm going to lose the brightness, I'm going to lose the immediacy of it, and that's what I want more than anything else here. All of this petal over here is in shadow, so let's get a bigger brush for the shadow now. And I'll get another another angled eclipse. Now, I've heard people complain that these don't keep their shape, but I've had these for I think a few years now and they're doing well. Basically, you got to wash your brushes as soon as you finish painting, you know. You really do. And I always do religiously. As soon as I switch the cameras off, the first thing I do is go to the sink and I wash my brushes. So this side is shadow because the light is coming from the right hand side down. So all of this side is shadow, right? Let's get the edge in. Just simple, two-color painting. Almost, you know, I'm modulating the color a little bit as we go, but it's basically two colors. I need to wipe out a little bit around here. Let's try one of Sarah's Q-tips. See how this works. Oh, nice. Oh, I like that. First time I've ever used a Q-tip to wipe out, and it's a very positive experience, I have to say. I will always keep them by my palette in the future. What are we here with shadow, right? So all the way from the middle of the flower up to about here is shadow. It's not covering as well. I don't have enough mixed. When you start to run out of a color that you have mixed, stop. Don't try and keep painting and spread the paint out to get it to cover because it will lose its depth. It will lose the ability to get all of the expressive qualities of oil paint into the work. Stop, get some more, mix some more of that color and then go back in again. A bit of quinacridone rose. Be about right. More of this shadow. That might be a little bit dark actually. Yeah, that's too dark. So the main problem that I'm finding so far as I paint is that my shadow areas are, I'm over egging, I'm overcooking the difference in value between the shadow and the light to try and make it clearer. But if I start to lose the values, it will no longer look like a flower, it will look like something else, an idea of a flower or something, you know. Try and get up to the background. All shadow. Actually, there's a little bit of light just on the edge there where the petal turns out, so I'll pick up some light with my light brush. Just put in a little little, and this brush is the perfect shape just to get that in there. All shadow around here. Won't really know until I get a little bit further in if this is all going to work out or not. My light brush, bring this round. We're getting gradually darker as we go around. So this area here is like somewhere between the shadow and the light. It is a challenge because the value of the light area and the value of the shadow area are so close. It is a challenge. So that's the kind of direction of the brush strokes I want to use, but I can't use those up to the edge because it's not going to give me the hard edge that I need. And a big part of being able to get that hard edge is having enough paint on the brush. If there's not enough paint on there, that hard edge will not be there. So this is thick. More shadow there, really. Let's get some transparent red oxide in there, and a little bit of quinacridone rose, more shadow color. The challenge is keeping the chroma up there, trying to make sure that I don't get too much of the background in onto my brush and then mixed into my colors, and then I'll really be screwed. Nice. Yeah, that's starting to come. More light as we go to the middle. I think the chroma must drop a little bit as we get towards the middle, probably because it's lighter here. And when you look in the middle and there's all that complexity of that, the little, what are they, the stamens or something? Is that right? I'm not going to bother with that at all. I'm just going to mix a general color that is going to be somewhere close. Light. See, I'm not bothering about all of that detail, not at all yet. I've got to get the colors right first. The flower has to be sitting has to be sitting in the painting before I'll start bothering with any details. Because I know just from experience that it's not the details that make the thing live. It's not the details that make it appear to be there, to be real. It's not the detail at all. It's the edges, the shape, color, and the value. Starting to come. Hello, Elizabeth. Don't worry, you're not late. There's no such thing as turning up late for a Friday live. I'm just painting, show up, stay for a bit, chat, go, make a cup of tea, whatever you want, come back later. It's fine. A lot of people paint along live. Anyone painting along live with me today? Let me know if you're painting with me. What's the name of the olive oil soap and where do you get it? I can't remember what it's called. I used to get this stuff off Amazon and that worked fine. I'll show you it though, but to give you an idea of the stuff I use now. Where is it? Here it is. It is, I don't even know what that says. It looks like Kali Orhan or something, olive oil soap. Nice pure soap. So all I do, I don't put anything on them. I don't put any solvent on my brushes ever. I just wipe them clean as I can with just kitchen roll. My hands are getting covered in orange. And then I wash them in warm water with olive oil soap. The rags, the kitchen roll that I wipe them with because it has some lead paint on it, I keep those separate in a bag, and when the bag gets too full, I take it down to the tip, let them know that there's some potentially hazardous paint in there, although it's like small trace, you know, and they dispose of it. To be honest with you, you know, I'm suspicious that what actually happens is that the council sells it on or you know, pays some country somewhere else to take it, and they probably just throw it in the sea. Who knows? I'm a little bit dubious about whether it's really treated as with the care that it should be. How are my values, do you think? Let's check my camera exposure now. I've got things covered and I can see a bit better. I think the camera exposure is pretty good. I think my values are not too bad. I think maybe I need to be a little bit lighter here. Let's try more cad yellow. So I'm using mostly the cad yellow. It's going to send the paint more yellow, but it's also gonna get me the chroma I want here. See, sometimes we've got to choose with paint. I can't get. I'll try a little bit of white as well. I can't get every color that I can see. Like if you see the actual flower, it's so intense. You know, you can't quite get there. You can get close, but not quite there. So sometimes we got to choose. You know, and I would rather choose to have the chroma. You know, I want the value. I definitely want the value to be right. And sometimes I would, you know, I would just be choosing like the chroma that I want. This shadow color, is that low enough, I wonder, to make some of these incredible crinkles? Yeah. I need to fill this white thing in the middle because it's making everything else difficult to judge at the moment. Hello, Helen. I haven't seen you for a long time. Can you use Chroma Magic on a desk PC and a laptop? I'm sure Michelle has answered this. Yes, she has. Good. Dirty Colour Art says, when I first started using the phone hack to check my values, I felt bad, like I was cheating. Then look at it like this. What you're doing is you're training your eye. You're training your eye to judge value until you get to a point where you don't really need to use it anymore. And that point will come. You will just get there way quicker if you have an instant feedback mechanism which allows you to train your brain. It's your brain, obviously, not your eye that's doing the checking. To train your brain to judge chroma and value better. All you're doing is using a more efficient method of training your brain. Look at it that way. Oh, that's interesting. Arena says, I shellac my panels and it dries in minutes smoothly so I can paint on it immediately. Great for impatient people like me. Also, completely sealed and I imagine very, very slick and non-absorbent. Yeah, that sounds an interesting thing to try. Oh, a few people painting along. Fantastic. It's good to throw yourself in there and have a go, you know, just to see. You know how it goes. I'm going to get back to the painting in a second. I'm just catching up on comments at the moment. Isabella says the high part of the flower is a bit darker. You mean this bit over here? I think this bit over here probably needs to be a bit darker there. But if I'm getting a feeling of light and shadow and I'm managing to keep the chroma, it's like, this is tricky, you know. It's tricky to keep that, so I'm trying to make sure. That I keep the chroma. It's like a bit of a high wire act, I could say. Elizabeth says, I recently asked Paul for a landscape workshop. All right, so people have been asking for this for a long time. It is coming. I am about to embark on a new project, so I've been quietly busying myself with painting landscapes and just kind of getting a feel for it, because I want to do it anyway. I want to paint landscape anyway, but there's no way I'm going to teach something unless I'm very confident that I can do it well. Okay. So moving on to the inside of the flower bit by bit. I'm doing the yellow part of the petals now. So the project that I've got going is I'm actually going to do a bunch of plein air. This is my plan anyway. You heard it here first, right? I'm going to start doing more plein air, but I want to get out a little bit further. I mean, the UK is an amazing place. We have, you know, the amount of different landscapes, amazing landscapes that we have out here. We're spoilt, really. And also I have Wales pretty much on my doorstep. So I'm planning to go out into the landscape more and more. I want about value 7 here. Taking my easel with me, so I've got a plein air kit. And I'm going to do some plein air painting. Also take reference photos of where I'm working from, so that I have both of those experiences to eventually translate into a landscape painting workshop, which is probably going to be coming, I don't know, it's hard to say for sure, but maybe towards the back end of the year, back end of this year, possibly. Look for a landscape painting workshop on the way. But I'm not, as I say, I'm not going to be held to the timeline, because I'm not going to do it unless I'm really happy that I can do a really good job of it and give you something really useful, you know, that's really going to help you move on. And I have a lot more experience at the moment painting still life and flowers, say, than I do shadow. Not shadow. I painted a bit of shadow, so I said shadow. Than I do landscapes. But I'm getting there. I think there's some. I've wanted to do it for a long time. My commitment to this is shown in the fact that I have just purchased myself. This is going to sound mad, but to me it makes perfect sense. I've just purchased myself a motorbike, the paint bike, which I'm going to be using in order to get out into the countryside, load it up with painting kit. I know it would be better to do it in the car, but if you know me, then you know I love riding motorbikes. So I'm putting together two things that I love. Got myself, it's a Royal Enfield Himalayan, which should be arriving next week. And I'm going to be out in the landscape painting, going around Wales, possibly Scotland, certainly the Cotswolds where I live, on this bike, looking for beautiful subjects to paint, painting them plein air. I'm going to try and film some of this as well, you know, and stick it on the YouTube channel. I think that would be fun. I'm going to paint this, you know, I was saying about all of those little seedy parts, the stamens or whatever they are. I'm going to get a small hog. I haven't used any hog brushes yet. And I'm going to try and paint that just as general colour. This is one of the things. Let me show you something actually on Chroma Magic just now. This is one of the things that I think Chroma Magic is really useful for. So around this area of the flower, there's a huge amount of complexity, but you have this on Chroma Magic. You can set how big the sample size is. Watch this square here. If I make it bigger, the sample size gets bigger and the color changes. So if I just want like a general color for about there, about that area that is going to work, it's going to be about that. Right? If I want a general color about here, no, it's quite different. It's more yellow, slightly darker. It's going to be about that. Down here where there's some shadow, pretty much the same. Bit darker, right? So if I hit those colors about right, mostly make sure that I get the value, and then I use my experience with chroma and hue to make sure that I get, you know, about the right chroma and about the right hue. So this one is about that color there. And you can paint a general color, which will get you really, really close to what's actually there. And then you, if you want to, you can add a little bit of detail. But 9 times out of 10, you find that once you've got it in there, you really don't need that much detail to make it work. You know, it's like you're almost there, just with a general color. And this is what painters do, you know, and this app can help you generalize and simplify like a painter does. That's another big advantage of it. Now, what it doesn't do is paint the picture for you. It doesn't give you every perfect color. One of the reasons is if you're using it on a phone or something like that, if you rely on the phone screen, phone screens tend to be more blue. So with a lot of the colors, you'll find that it's difficult to, if you try to match exactly the hue that you see, it'll be slightly out. So it doesn't absolve you of having to do any work to choose the colors, you know. But what it will do, if you get a value scale like this, it will enable you to translate the values exactly to paint, because this is your real world connection is the value scale. So if you're using the Chroma Magic app and you're getting the values wrong, the problem is not the app or the value scale. The problem is most likely that you're mixing them wrong, and you need to just develop your ability to judge value better. And it gives you a guide to the chroma, a guide. And the most important parts of color in painting, if you want to paint realism anyway, are the value is the most important. The next most important is the chroma. And as long as you're close on the hue, the painting is going to work. So I spend a lot of time like squinting down to try and judge these colors, you know, as closely as I can. Try and get them. You know, I don't rely on the app. Well, actually, I don't need it at all these days, but I use it for teaching a lot. But I would recommend not relying on it to the exclusion of using your own ability to judge color. If you think it's just something that's going to show you exactly what color to paint all the time. I'm talking about this because there's a discussion about it on the moment in my community, and I haven't had time to weigh in on it yet. That's not what Chroma Magic does, but it will give you the exact values that it will do. Let's put some little flecks of detail in here just to suggest that we've got some seeds. You know, you don't want to be painting every little thing. Who's got the time? Who's got the time to do all of that? But we get the general color in, and then a little bit of suggestion. Often be enough to get you there. So how are we doing? I think we might be at the point where I can start to stand back and judge and have a look and see if I feel I'm getting a feeling of light and shadow. And I think I am. You know, I want to be able to start to see some form appearing at this point. Some of these beautiful ridges in and then soften them with a flat synthetic so they don't just look like lines of paint. Yeah, the flower is beginning to sit there. Beginning to sit in the space, that's what I want. And maybe it's time to think about suggesting the bottle now. Sorry, I've been yakking and painting and haven't checked the comments for a little while. Sandra says, how is it that certain colours manage to jump onto your clothes and fingers? It's all the ones I choose as well, right? It's all, I'm getting covered here too. They just seem to go a long way. You know, phthalo blue and phthalo green is the worst. Quinacridone rose will do it too. Any synthetic pigment, it seems, they do love to get onto your clothes, onto your hands, and basically just about everywhere. You're onto your pet. I'm just making sure I've got this balanced about right, the light from the camera. Before I paint the bottle in, I'm just going to soften some of that area a little bit. What should we use? Let's get a big old... No, not that. That's too stiff. I almost went for this one, which is another Rosemary's brush and an ivory, but it's very stiff and I want something very soft. I'll just go Old Faithful. This is a very old watercolor wash brush I got a long time ago. I'm just looking at this. I'm standing back and looking, and I feel like I want a bit more of a gentle transition into the background here instead of too much texture. Unfortunately, I've painted the flower mostly now, so there's a limit to what I can do for my softening. There's a limit to what I can add now. There's a limit to how much I can do this. I can't get close to the flower, but I'm loving the texture of the painting though. Yeah, good point. Michelle says lower chromas are more prone to the phone screen shift and high chromas are very close, right? Yeah. And also a lot of the time, one of the lessons that Chroma Magic can teach you is a lot of the time when we're painting, it will show you that colors are generally a lot lower chroma than you think. Now I'm really wishing that I'd softened all of this background before I started painting the flower, because I like shadow to be soft and have texture in the light, and I can't soften all of it because if I get too close to the flower, I'm going to destroy the edge. But there's a limit to what I can do. Joan says you make it look so easy. It's not. I'm not finding this easy at all. I'm enjoying it, but I definitely wouldn't say I'm finding it easy. I know from experience when I look at this tomorrow, although I'm fairly happy with how it's going at the moment, I know when I look at it tomorrow, I will see a lot of things that I've got wrong. Values that should be slightly different, you know, shape that I've got not quite right. You know, I know that I will. So I'm just bringing out the shadow areas a little bit more, but I'm trying to be careful not to let the chroma get too low. The value get too low. But there are a couple of places I think I can push the value down a little bit. Bring in a little bit more transparent red oxide. Just to get a slightly darker value in these areas. Bring out the form a little bit more. It's like, I think, like part of the thing with painting tricky things like, you know, flowers like this is you need to be very economical. If you try to paint too much, if you try to paint like everything that you can see, the form starts to disappear. You know, so I'm trying to work this feeling of there being light on this side and shadow on this side. I'm trying to work that as much as I can. So I'm trying to simplify what's actually there to get a stronger feeling of form. So that you can feel the kind of the scoop of the flower, you know. This might be a good one to work on more than once, actually. Maybe to do another layer. Let's have a look at the bottle. Now this is going to go in like... Cindy says, never take a white grape Pyrenees dog and phthalo green painting. Ask me how I know. Oh dear. And it never comes out, does it? It's like, phthalo green never comes out. Hmm. So Jackie says, I see the shadows as a dark red, while the painting shadows look like a brown orange. I know it will still look amazing. I just see that difference in chroma. I think part of your problem, Jackie, is that you're confused about the difference between hue and chroma. You're talking about hue. So a difference between a brown orange and a red, that's hue. Chroma is how intense the color is. You need to clarify the terms, and that will help you. Will actually help you with your mixing. It's not, I'm not pedantic about the difference between chroma and hue just for the sake of it. It makes a big difference to how accurately you can mix. Yeah, Design Girl says, my form, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. I know it, but I've forgotten it. I'm sorry. My form is disappearing the more I work. Yeah, you've got to know when to stop. So I'm not going to do much more on this flower now. If I look at it from a distance, it's looking about right to me. I can feel that there's some form in there, so I'm not going to mess with that anymore. I do want to put the bottle in though. And I think I need to be a little bit lighter. Like around here. Lighter values. No, it's probably fine. Let's mix some bottle colors. So there you go. So what you're saying there, Jackie, the shadow looks brighter to me. Brighter is a very inexact term. So chroma is the intensity of the color. Value is the lightness and darkness. Brightness doesn't describe either of those terms. It probably describes a combination of them. Like people use warm and cool. Most of the time when people use the terms warm and cool, they're talking about hue. But actually, if you put a low chroma red against a high chroma red of the same hue, the low chroma one will look very cool in comparison. So it's usually a combination of chroma and hue that makes a difference between warm and cool. Do you see what I mean? We've got to be a bit careful about our terms, because the language we use when we talk about colors affects how we see them and how we mix. Okay? Contrast as well is a very inexact term. It's value, relative value, and that's what your value scale is for. And if you're using the app correctly, that's what this value scale is for. It allows you to directly translate those values from the reference photo to the palette, and then from the palette to the painting. I suspect you have a problem in how you're using the tools at some point, but it will let you nail the value, but you still have to judge the chroma to an extent yourself, and you have to judge the hue to an extent yourself. I don't have a chroma scale. Like, you can't send off for a chroma scale like you can get one of these value scales. Well, you can, but the only one I'm aware of is a Munsell book. You can get the, I do recommend, like on my color course, I recommend getting the student Munsell book, and there's some exercises in there to help calibrate your visual system to judge value and chroma better, and hue too. More intense, that's it, yeah. Yeah, so if you're using brightness as a term, as a substitute for intensity, then intensity is chroma, yeah. Okay. Bottle colors. I'm going to mix just like a general yellowy greenish of about a value 3 or 4. I'm going to need some clean white probably. I'm not doing very well looking after my white today. I'm going to put a little bit of the phthalo green in. Now this is hue, because I want it to go a little bit more towards blue, right? So given what we were just talking about, And then I'm going to chuck some black in it, and that's going to drop the chroma a little bit. What value have I got here? I want about 3-ish, bit light still. Bring it down, a bit of raw umber, because it's going too blue. It's probably not too bad. So I'm looking for a general overall color for the glass, and then a color for what I can see through the glass. So that's a little bit lower chroma. So I'll get raw umber and white to about the value I want, which is a little bit lighter. Because I can see there, what I'm seeing there is a combination of the glass and the background. That will probably work. So I'm just going to put some rough shapes down these colors and see if they're going to work. That's probably a little bit too... I will see. Let's just put some down. I'm wondering if it's the colors I have here a little bit too green-blue. So where's the bottom of the glass? The bottom of the bottle. Out here. It's quite near the bottom of the painting, actually. It's probably like about down there. Definitely too green. A little bit more fallow, but then that sends the chroma wild, so I'll bring some black in to bring the chroma down. The value goes down, so I've got to bring the value back up. You know, a lot of the time, like, mixing is pull and push, and you get a feel for it after a while. That's, for me, that's what the most useful thing that you can do with all of this Munsell stuff is just get a feel for color mixing, and then eventually you get to a point where you really don't need to use the aids anymore. You can get really quickly close to what you want and be able to judge your colors against each other. By eye, you know, and that's the point you want to get to. And I think that's the real value of these tools, you know, is it allows you to get to that point more quickly without spending what can be years with fruitless experimentation with esoteric palettes and mixing techniques that don't actually get you anywhere near the color that you want, because they don't teach you how to judge color, they don't teach you how to mix. I do not want that for you. I do not want you to spend those fruitless years. Actually, I think the hog is the wrong brush for that. I'm going to switch to a synthetic. This is an ivory flat. So all I'm doing at the moment is trying to put shapes down and judge the color. I'm not bothered about whether anything that I'm putting down really, or I'm attempting not to be bothered about whether anything I'm putting down at the moment looks like a bottle. You know, I'm just putting shapes down, and if I get the shapes down and they're about the right color, I should need very, very little actual painting to I just want to suggest it, you know, I just want the feeling that it's there. Very hard to get any dark color in. It's just sliding over the surface. Like now I'm starting to regret my choice of panel. I'm just like, oh, it's going to cover, it'll stick, it won't stick. This brush is probably too stiff. It's sliding through the paint and just kind of, see, that's too dark now. So I paint a bit, I stand back, I judge. I paint a bit, I stand back, I judge. No, it's like a dance. If you don't stand back, you will never be able to judge like how your colors are working as a part of the whole. And that's a hugely important part of being able to paint well. And if the colours are good, it's amazing how little you can paint. It's amazing how little you need to paint in order to have something feel like it's actually there. And at the end of the day, colour is relative. You know, you don't have to paint the colours you see. I think it's really good to learn. But there's no law about it. If you want to use more expressive colour, you can, but just be sure, I would say, that you're making choices. The colour isn't making the choices for you, and then you're saying, well, I couldn't get the colour, but I couldn't get the colour right. But that's how I saw it. That's how I feel it. You know, it's better to be sure that you actually can get the colours as they are, and then decide to change them if you want to, because then if you can do that, then by evolving the ability to paint and to judge colour, to mix, you'll develop a more highly evolved sense of colour, the nuances of colour, chroma, and you know how beautiful greys can be. Like, it takes time to pick all of that up. Time and experience. A lot of the time, like you can see, if you see like paintings, I'm not having a go at abstract painting here, but and it's not true of all abstract painting by any means. But you can see sometimes, like in abstract paintings, like you can tell the person hasn't done an awful lot of work with color, because the colors are mostly red, blue, and green, red, blue, and yellow primaries, and that's a sure sign of someone who doesn't have a very evolved sense of color. The highlight palette knife for this. The main thing about this is it needs to be the lightest part of the painting, and I need to try and get it in the right place. Hopefully in the right place. First time. Yeah. So I want a shadow behind my glass, but the shadow won't be, the cast shadow won't be all that dark, because you know the glass is transparent. It will just be a suggestion of a cast shadow. There's a really lovely dark area, like right down the side, that I haven't put in. Let's just clang that in. It's kind of it's just it's a change of color of the of the tabletop, but it's really nice just to use as like an abstract shape down here. And when I balance when I decide on the crop of the reference photo, that's done mostly from a point of view of the spacing. So this dark area on the left-hand side will have been a part of the composition as I was putting it together, you know. Give it a little bit of texture with the knife. It's only paint, you can play. And if you don't like it, you can just wipe it off. little area of shadow there. That helps that's a bit dark, but that little area of shadow helps the bottle sit on the surface. I love these strokes. I love this with all of this texture. You know, it's tempting to kind of smooth all of that out, but I like it how it is. I think it's got life. So this is what I wanted. I want this, you know, all of this texture and life and looseness, and then for the flower, you know, the colours of the flower to really stand out as part of the whole overall painting. Some clean white. Just a few little last changes in value around the bottle I'm going to put in. Well, let's be wiping that off. Slightly overdone, but just to help the bottle, like compositionally speaking, help it to kind of stand out a little bit in the painting. Yum. I should have raised the value a little bit here. Maybe I can still do it. Maybe it's not too late. Because it's going to help this cast shadow area read more as a cast shadow. But the problem is there's so much been painted around it now that it's difficult to do it. I've got to be careful of everything around it. Yeah, just enough to show the edge of the bottle. And I've got to take that dark patch out so that this still feels like shadow here. Just a suggestion of a cast shadow. Yum. Love it. So I'm not going to paint any of the detail in this at all, I don't think, because I really like it how it is. Let's have a quick last stand back and look and see. Like I need to be possibly a little bit lighter here. And a little bit around here maybe. Sorry, I will catch up on the comments very soon. I'm being a very bad host. I have friends who come to visit from far away and they're very patiently sitting, chatting with Michelle whilst I'm painting. It's not right, is it? See, this is maybe a little bit too dark now. Just gradually, I'm tweaking now that everything is filled in and I can see it all, I can kind of tweak things a little bit here and there where I feel like the values are not quite what they should be. And this, of course, like, you know, this comes from just like painting quite a bit and then you know, experience and feel and going with your gut and all of that. It still counts for a lot. See, now I've overdone it. Now I've lost the simplicity. That's all it took. Just a few strokes and I lost the simplicity. And I lost the strength of the form. So let's smooth all of this out again. I had to fuss, I had to go in and have a play, and I lost the freshness and the immediacy, and I lost the form. So easy to do. So easy to do, to fiddle and think you can get a little bit more out of it, when in fact you've actually got it about as far as it's going to go. Which is about this far. Yeah. So I'm in two minds about this, whether I push this value too high or not. But I think it works in the painting. And that's the main thing at the end of the day. Oops, sorry. Just bashed my mic. So Pritchett says, good question. What about colour relativity and its effect on colour perception when the same colour appears different under different lighting? Well, you're talking about two separate things there, firstly. So yeah, absolutely the relationship of the colours. So under different lighting, colours do obviously look very different. But we're dealing with like a contained world of colour here. So if I took this painting and I put it under a yellow light, hopefully it would still work, because all of the colours would then have a slightly yellow cast, so it would preserve the relationships of it. So different lighting in the painting itself, on the painting, shouldn't make that much difference. Obviously there's better lighting to look at a painting and then worse lighting, right? So that's one part of what you were talking about. Now, colours, seeing colours differently due to the colours around them, yeah, I mean that is a thing. And you can absolutely use it in your painting. If you're painting like using colour more expressively and more freely, you can use that as much as you like. You don't. This goes back to what I was saying earlier on. You don't have to paint the colours that you see. But if you can't paint the colours you see, it's a really good idea to learn, because you get a much more finely developed sense of colour. And at the end of the day, it's up to you how close to realism or you know, how abstract and expressive you want your paintings and your colour to be. That's a personal choice, and it's up to you. In a painting like this, where I've tried to keep close to the colours that I see, you say the green will affect the colour of the orange. Yes, it will, but that's within this subject. So as long as I get the orange and the green close, then I will preserve the colour relationships in the subject. Do you see what I mean? But you don't have to, obviously. You can change them a little bit if you want to. You know, I could make this bottle more blue in the hopes that it would make the orange feel a little bit more intense. You know, I could work a little bit more blue into the background in the hope that it would make the orange feel more intense. You can absolutely do that, you know. But it doesn't affect when you're painting something like more realistically like this, because all I'm doing is preserving the relationships that are in there already. But yeah, I mean, colour is endlessly fascinating, and there are many, many different ways to look at it. Thank you, Isa. You're very welcome. I love doing this stuff. I love painting live for you all and being able to talk. For me, it's just fascinating, you know, listening to, well, I should say reading, you know, the comments that people make, and hopefully being able to shed some light on a few things as we go. It's my favourite part of the week. JK says, how did the green bottle paint not mix with the brown beneath it? It did. It did, but they're both quite low chroma. So all I've done is I've adjusted my mix as I went until I ended up with the colour that I wanted here. It did mix with it. It did. I got as close as I could, you know, to what I thought the colour that I needed there was, and then I adjusted it on the surface of the painting itself. So yeah, it did mix. You can't really avoid that happening, you know, when I've clagged this paint on so thick. I mean, for an alla prima painting, that's like it's painted like a multi-layer painting. It's really, really thick. Sirko, really good to see you. I'm so glad you're back. Plein air is so much fun. Going to be doing that, yeah. Going to be doing quite a bit of that soon. Thank you, Sandra, she says. The flower is asking me to smell it. Yeah. So also, you know, hopefully this is partly at least a lesson in simplicity, and not trying to paint like every little detail that you can see. You know, I'm happy with this as a painting. If I take the reference away and I only look at the painting, as a painting, I'm really happy with it. I think it looks really nice. I think bang it in a nice dark frame, and it would sing out beautifully. You know, I think it's come out well. Is it exactly like the reference? No, no. But I think that's a mistake for that to be your yardstick of whether a painting that you make is successful or not. Did it make you feel good when you were painting it? Does it have form? Does it have life? You know, there are lots of other different ways that are more important to be thinking about, about whether you're happy with the piece you painted. For those of you who were painting along today, hope you enjoyed it. Do stuff your paintings in the community. The most likely problem that you came across was these colours here, like keeping that chroma high enough and painting it simply enough. Did you see how I started to lose it? Towards the end of the painting, I went in and tried to improve it a little bit, and I actually made it worse. I can't go back now. I can't go back to the earlier stage that it was when I liked it more. You know, I tried to simplify it a little bit, again, to try and get some of that feeling back, but I lost something and I can't ever get it back. And, you know, a lot of people wonder and talk about, as do I, how do you know when to stop painting? That's when to stop painting, when you've just done that. You know, after a while, you get a sixth sense for when things are starting to run away from you, and you know it's time to stop, and that was time to stop. This is an immediate, fairly quick, textural, gestural painting, and it's where it needs to be now. I think it doesn't need anything more. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I enjoyed it very much. It was wonderful to paint for you. Thanks very much for coming and being such a great crowd and chatting, and such interesting comments. Always lovely to see. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll be back again next Friday with another subject. Who knows? I'm really going hard on the flowers at the moment now. You know, they're all out. Saw some peonies the other day. Ooh, tough. Peonies are tough to paint, but so beautiful. I'm not saying I'm doing peonies next week, but it's highly likely it will be flowers again. Anyway, time for my pizza, time to go and see my friends. Thank you very much for coming, everybody, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.